Thank you, Ray. Good afternoon, everyone. And everybody on the internet, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. The title for this sermonette is going to be Age of Granite. So I said that to Ron earlier, and he looked at me really puzzled. So hopefully I can explain a little bit more. Kind of a theme that we're going to go with on this one is out of their own mouths. So to give you a little bit of an introduction, one of the key tenets in science today is known as the law of uniformitarianism. I think I pronounced that right, uniformitarianism. Now, that sounds like a $2 word, but there's really just the assumption that the same natural laws and all processes that are observed and operate on the Earth and in the universe today now have and always operated that exact same way. So what you're seeing today has always happened back in time forever. Now, these observations apply everywhere. And because of this, it rules out the need for any of the catastrophes we see in the Bible, such as Noah's Ark. This type of absolute scientific law is what I hope to show you is going to be their own Achilles heel. So, the law of uniformitarianism is how some scientists today try to explain the need for such a long period of evolution. And I'm sure everyone's heard this term, billions and billions of years ago, right? Yeah. My kids are bombarded with that brainwashing information. From the time they were very young, we noticed it in all the little dinosaur cartoons. Matter of fact, this brainwashing continues throughout their whole education career. During my research for this short sermon, I came across, it's called Important Events in the History of Life. And this is from Berkeley. And now this is not the Berkeley University, or this is not my Berkeley here in Texas, but this is Berkeley University in California. Anyway, it's a semi-specific timeline of evolution of Earth over the last 4.6 billion years. It's very interesting, and I've actually got a copy in the back if anybody wants to take a look at it. I do want to make a comment about their oldest time mark at first here, which is going to be their 4.6 billion years. It states that 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth starts to form and is bombarded by meteorites and comets. And then also I found another one from BBC Science, and this is a quote. The Earth is thought to have been formed about 4.6 billion years ago by collisions in the giant disc-shaped cloud of material that has also formed the Sun. Gravity slowly gathered these gases and dust together into clumps that became asteroids and small early planets called planetesimals. I think that's little bitty planets. These objects collided repeatedly and gradually got bigger, building up the planets in the solar system, including the Earth. Still in quotes here. The details of how the Earth is formed is still being worked out. Scientists study meteorites and the oldest rocks on Earth to understand what happened in these earliest times in the solar system. They also observe other solar systems and galaxy, the Milky Way, unquote. So, at least the BBC right there admitted that the details of how the Earth formed are still kind of being worked out in their science. One key point that I'd like to point out is a little-known scientific discovery. It was by Dr. Robert Gentry, and it's called polonium halos. And this maybe debunk this whole 4.6 years, dust gathered together, make little rocks join together, bigger rocks, now we got the Earth, right? Because Dr. Robert Gentry, he's a nuclear physicist, and he found these little markers in granite, which they call, what the evolution referred to as primordial stone. So granite is the oldest stone that scientists recognize today. I'm sorry? And it's also around bathroom sinks today, right? Now, so you can look in your bathroom sink and find these little polonium halos in there. And these little markers called polonium halos, these are radioactive halos that were frozen instantaneously when the Earth was created. These specific radioactive halos, called polonium-218, only last for a matter of seconds before they decay into another form. Now, in essence, this is a perfectly preserved snapshot that shows the Earth has been formed instantaneously. For these rings to be preserved in the granite, it could not have been formed over millions of years of bouncing together and coming together and molten rock going, because the polonium would have changed, and you wouldn't have these halos in the granite. Now, let's see. We can put a couple of these scriptures together in Genesis 1:1 and Psalms 33:9. I'm going to read them real quick for the sake of time, but in Genesis 1 it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Right? Now, if we skip over to Psalms 33:9, it says, "For he spoke, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast." Sounds pretty instantaneous to me, right? Now, these scriptures match up exactly with what we see in science with the polonium halos. Now, at least in this situation, it doesn't disprove that the Earth is billions of years old, but what it does prove is it was formed instantaneously, okay? Otherwise, again, these polonium halos would have just completely disappeared. Now, a couple other important notes from the timeline that Berkeley does not call out, but I'm going to go ahead and use them for little wrinkles in their plan today, is the sun and the moon. The sun has been observed and measured for over 100 years now, and something is very interesting. The sun is shrinking. Now, don't get too scared. It's okay. They've been watching this and documenting it for some time, and the sun is shrinking at a very constant rate of about 5 feet per hour. So 5 feet per hour sounds like a lot to us here on Earth, but when you think that the sun is over 100 Earths across, 5 feet per hour doesn't sound too much. However, if we extrapolate that backwards in time, that's 43,800 feet per year, or 8.3 miles per year that the sun is actually shrinking. Now we're starting to get some numbers that we can kind of correlate with, right? But that still isn't that much when you consider the diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles, 864,576 miles across. So 8 miles per year is not very much. But if you start talking about the time frame that the evolutionists are talking about, and you go back just 100,000 years, the sun would have actually been double the size that it is today. Okay? Now, if you keep going back in time, less than 20 million years ago, the sun would have actually been touching the Earth, right? That's very bad news for Mercury, for Venus, not to mention it'd be very, very hot here on the Earth, right? Now, so we've got this, the sun cannot be billions of years old, otherwise everything would have been engulfed in it. Lastly, what I'd like to look at is the moon. So we got the sun and the moon. Now the gravitational between the Earth and the moon, I'm sure everybody knows, causes our oceans to have tides, right? Now, what you may not know is this tidal friction that the Earth and terrestrial surface, the water moving, it actually causes the moon to go further away from us. So when the tides go back and forth, it causes energy, which then pushes the moon out further and further. Now, before everybody starts running for the hills again, this is a very, very small increase. Actually, the increase is about 4 centimeters per year, right? That was what we observed back in 1981. But I want to go ahead and throw the other wrinkle in. So here is a quote from another physicist, Donald DeYoung, and he says, "One cannot extrapolate the present 4 centimeters per year separation rate back in history. It has that value today, but was more rapid in the past because of the tidal effects." Basically, I'm going to stop right there. Basically, what that means is that when it was closer, the tides were greater, so it was causing more energy, pushing the moon out faster. Okay? So, in fact, the separation rate depends on the distance to the 6th power, a very strong dependence. The rate was perhaps, and this is his quote, was perhaps 20 meters per year long ago, and the average is 1.2 meters per year. So with this information, we can take 1.2, which is the average, right? We won't do the scale that curves up, but we'll just do the 1.2. The distance from the Earth to the moon is 238,000 miles, okay? That's the average. Some of it goes down to 224, I think, and up to 252. But the average is 238. So if we take this and extrapolate it back in time with just the 1.2 meters, 384 million years ago, the moon would have actually been touching the Earth. So again, we can't have 4.6 billion years. I know that 384 million is a pretty big number, but that isn't even, what is that, 100th or a 10th of what they actually say the age of the Earth truly is. So, in conclusion, I want everybody to turn to Job 15, verse 6. And I'll give everybody just a minute. Again, I cheated here. I got it marked. and it says, "Your own mouth condemns you, and not I. Yes, your own lips testify against you." Evolution does not fit with its own scientific law of uniformitarianism. If you look at the actual physics of the universe and the signatures that God has left throughout his universe, it's almost as though God gave us the ammunition to battle the man-made religion of evolution even before it was created. It's created by Satan just to distract man from the truth of God.